Welcome, golfers. Episode 16 of Better Golf with Kevin and Jake Haime. It's a really interesting thing, Jake. Welcome, first of all. I don't know if I have to welcome you. I see you 70 hours a week here at the Golf Center.
I feel very welcomed.
Especially when you were setting everything up this morning. Anyway, you keep thinking, what are we going to talk about in November and October? And I've been doing radio for 25 years, Jake, and you keep thinking, oh, no, there's nothing to talk about. And then we've had Tiger hit 82. We've had Rory McIlroy win a WGC.
Yeah, it turns out the ball keeps rolling.
Yeah, and not to mention the teaching we can do with it. So it's number 16, everybody. We've been doing this a while. If you're just finding us, I like to think the difference between our podcast and everybody else's is we go a little deeper into teaching and making you better players. I've tried to do that in the radio show for 2.5 decades now as well, not just commentary on or perceived commentary, quality commentary on swings. I had a guy on a couple of weeks ago on my radio show, and he starts talking about Tiger swing changes, and I'm just rolling my eyes.
It wasn't good.
Oh, my God almighty. And he's like a 14 handicapper reporter, So I think we bring a perspective to the game through 20, 30 years on the teaching tee in my case, and your whole life on the teaching tee in your case to make people better. So that's the premise of the podcast, and today we're going to talk about Tiger and his 82 and some critical elements through his coaches and swing changes in his putting.
Just a little bit of Tiger talk.
A little bit of Tiger talk, and we're going to talk about Rory McIlroy, who just won a WGC. You were saying he's the leading European now, right? Not really a big number next to Tiger, but...
No, he's the only Euro to have 3 WGC wins at this point.
That seems low. Doesn't that seem low? I mean, if you count all of them over the years, including the match play, and you'd think a guy would have 5, somebody, but it puts Tiger's 18 in perspective pretty quickly. Rory's had an amazing year. I know you're a big Rory guy, Jake, and we'll talk about him as well. And there's a link there to the synergy of this whole show, because I did a couple of blast motion putting, fitting, and lessons this week. And Brad Faxon, of course, is the spokesman for blast putting and one of the great putters of all time. And he sort of turned Rory around a little bit. I don't know if he needed...
On the putting front, for sure.
I don't know if he needed a full turnaround, but... for a while there, Rory's wedges and putting were pretty atrocious as
compared
I think
to the
back
rest
to last
of his game.
year. Right?
We should always say that, compared to the rest of his game.
Yeah, the interplanetary excellence of his driving. I mean, you have to compare him to people, whoever's playing in the universe, not just on planet Earth, because this guy drives a golf ball like almost nothing you've ever seen.
Did you happen to see the highlight after? I know it was the middle of the night, but the playoff in Shanghai at the WGC. Rory after said he knew his advantage in the playoff. The first advantage was when Xander picked the slip of paper out of Slugger White's hat that said 2 on it. He knew he had an advantage because I could rip a driver down that hole and make Xander think. And then you look at the top tracer line of Rory. It was a frozen rope right down the fairway, perfect on a par 5 over water.
Staggering rhythm, staggering rotation and speed of rotation. So we'll talk about that a bunch too. But I guess let's start with Tiger Woods.
Happily.
Yeah, happily is right. We had a bit of a giddy fest on Saturday on TSN there, talking about, all the records. 683 or 53. I got to get my glasses on here. I think 683 weeks at number 1, 82 wins, obviously 15 majors. 142 cuts made in a row, all these mid 90% closure rates on everything, 3 U.S. juniors, 3 U.S. amateurs, 18 WGCs, 2 FedEx Cups. It goes on and on and on.
It does. And I think, I know as Tiger fans, you're right, giddy fest is a little bit the right word, but I think, as much as Tiger winning the Zozo itself probably isn't a momentous occasion. It's great for the tournament. It's good for the PGA Tour expansion into Asia, and it's good for golf. But, him actually tying the record of Sam Snead it's a good time to put his career in context. Look what's going to come to the future. And I think it is important to celebrate it a little bit. I mean, amidst all the controversy and him winning and then fading and then winning and then fading everything recently, I think, looking at the career as a whole, it's a good thing to be doing right now, and whether it
listen,
continues or not.
As a good Catholic boy, besides the the rising of Jesus Christ. This is the second most interesting comeback of all time. I mean, this guy,
Agreed.
he was done. He was on the mat. The ref was counting to 9 for the complete knockout of his golf game, and boop, he's back up and Davis Love, and I want to talk about that a little bit too today, this whole CBS controversy. But Davis Love, who's just been hired by CBS, said he thinks he'll be number 1 again. And Davis Love is not a stupid man. And, when I think back to so many prognosticators who wrote him off, once again, I'm kind of alluding to those guys who are now the reporters who are commenting on.
But for a long
on his
time,
swing
they
technique.
I mean, I remember that scratch golf video when Tiger first won the Tour Championship at the end of 2018 that came out of all of these high-end reporters on ESPN, Fox, everywhere, saying Tiger Woods is done. It's a stupid opinion to think he's not.
I think people like to make, on TV, you want to make a prediction, right? Who's going to win the game?
That's true.
That's all I get. The guys call me up from TSN in Montreal, and they'll say, who's going to win this week? It's like the stupidest thing because you can't – it depends on how they're putting, whether they had a fight with their wife. There's so many elements that lead to guessing who'll win it, and people like to make statements to say – because if you get them right, like Tony Romo, everyone thinks you're a genius.
But it's also especially hard in golf, right? Because it is a little different when you're talking football, baseball, basketball, NHL. I mean, it's two teams playing against each other.
Yeah.
So you can look at the two teams and go objectively, who's probably going to win this game. In golf, you have 144 players potentially playing for one title that week, and it could be a player that you've never heard of come up from the middle of nowhere, and who's ever going to call that? So I think.
Well, okay. So let's stick to Tiger here for a sec. So. From the perspective of his arc, right? 2009 was the fire hydrant, I think, or was it fall 2008 after he won
shoulder season of that
on the
year,
broken leg? So he was already into a lot of injuries. But basically, he lost a 3-year span and another 2-year span. And then if you factor in all the swing changes, from Chris Como to Sean Foley to Hank Haney to Butch Harmon. If you factor the changes in, I'd argue he threw away another 9 months each time to a year of changing his muscle pattern.
Yeah, so, whether he was not successful in those times, I think he was successful in many of the changeovers, but he probably wasn't successful as he could have been, right? He wasn't maximum potential at times.
Oh, hey, what are you talking about? When he was in rehab and DUI and running away from Elam with the 9-iron?
No, of course not. I'm saying
he wasn't. They were almost. You're saying that when he changed coaches.
Yeah. I'm saying I agree that was also wasted time. I mean, I don't think he had no success during those changeovers, but it was definitely not his potential at those times.
Yeah, there's an argument that. That's another endless argument whether or not staying with Butch would have produced a better Tiger.
Yeah, there's no way to know.
Than changing. Tiger, though, I think had to challenge himself. And anyway. Amazing to see this comeback, and I can remember on radio saying, "Look at guys." This guy does things that no one's ever done, and there's famous stories about David Faraday, who goes up and looks at a lie in the rough and says, "Oh, he's chipping out for sure," and Tiger hits a 2-iron to the middle of the green, 260 yards away. The guy can do things and always could that no one could. He's the only other man I've ever seen besides Jack Nicklaus who always makes the putt when he needs to on that last hole. Amazing emotional, mental strength, and to write him off for any reason, especially with the longevity of a golf career, other than almost paralysis, is crazy. Yeah. Now, I think he was there. I mean, I was one of the last guys to slither off the bandwagon when he, said, I can't even chip. I've been on my back for 6 months. I'm hoping to walk again and spend time with my kids. Even I slithered off that bandwagon, but a lot of guys jumped off way too early. Just an amazing athlete, a historic athlete. We're so lucky to have him in golf, and the 82 wins kind of shows that. The win at the Masters last year, the euphoria of sports fans, and a lot of people don't like Tiger because of his off-course indiscretions.
I think
some people don't like Tiger for other reasons, the fist pumping, other stuff. He's not the most popular golfer ever, but he certainly.
I disagree with that statement. I don't think that's a fair statement. I think by far he's the most popular golfer ever. That just not everybody has the positive popular opinion of him. You don't think, based on all the reaction of actual golf fans, it's
He's
not
the most
more
famous golfer ever.
Well, of course, that's a given. I'm saying you don't think he's the most popular golfer. I would, just because some people don't like him, I don't think that's
Yeah,
that's
he's
a fair statement.
polarizing to a certain degree with the fist pump and the whole thing. You know, I don't think it's even close with he and Snead. And I take nothing away from Sam Snead. There's legendary stories about him kicking the top of a door frame in his 50s. He was so flexible and strong and really went through his career a lot more like Phil Mickelson with this long, lanky, rhythmic swing and never had an injury to speak of that I know of. You don't know, really. There were no medical trailers on the PGA Tour back in the day, but an amazing athlete, you know, a real neat individual in the history of golf. But, you know, and I guess it sounds a little whatever to take anything away from him. But Tiger Woods has had this white-hot glare on him since he showed up on Mike Douglas as a 3-year-old. And, I mean, I can't even tell you. Bob Drum used to go to the Masters and cover it, and there'd be a few guys, you know, with their fedoras on, scribbling notes as the guys came off the green on their notepads and then typewritering it into a couple of papers, right? Now there's hundreds and hundreds of media, not to mention TMZ and everything that's off course as well, or outside the game of golf. CBS Sports, ESPN, and not even sports stuff, you know. They're talking about him on talk television. And I mean, to do what he did under the white-hot glare of the last 20, since I guess 97, his first major.
Yeah.
So 22 years is fascinating and difficult. And you start looking at the stats he racked up, playing against the best players who have ever played the game, more depth at least on the PGA Tour. And every one of his wins, go to Wikipedia and look, the worst win he had was like the Buick Open, which was a full field PGA Tour event. Most of it is bigger than that between WGCs and, you know, the Invitationals, Memorial and Bay Hill and majors. It's been crazy, really. And I only really find Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, and Wayne Gretzky, Babe Ruth, I suppose, although, you know, he was long gone before I ever watched.
I still think Serena Williams is a comparison as well.
Yeah, you said that on the radio. Yeah. That's an interesting one to come up with. Well, listen, Kathy Whitworth has 88 wins. Tiger technically doesn't have the professionals record yet.
Yeah, but I think
on an official tour. So Tiger, it should be said, too, has many more pro wins, different things he's played in that aren't PGA Tour events. But he's at 82, Kathy Whitworth at 88. Which is stunning, too. I mean, you know, you got to pay attention to some of those records.
I was having this conversation with somebody after that was brought up earlier, and it's the same discussion as the Sam Snead discussion. I mean, it's all depth of field. You know, I don't think it is taking anything away from Kathy Whitworth or from Sam Snead to say that it's not the same thing as Tiger's done now. And it's not their fault. They grew up in a time when, and they played in a time when the depth of field wasn't the same. But frankly, what Tiger has done is a completely different animal than what either of those two have done, because the depth of field is everything, right? It's so impressive to win a tour event, not because the PGA Tour put their name on it, but because the people you have to play against to get there and the people you have to play against to win. And
well, the emotional intelligence and intestinal fortitude you need to play golf is different than other sports in that adrenaline doesn't hide anything. You know, I've never played in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but I know when you hit the ice and someone hits you, all of a sudden you're just an athlete doing a job, right?
Absolutely.
That sort of thing. In golf,
it's reactionary.
In golf, it's 10 minutes between every shot. And when you look at how amazing his feats have been, the great thing about sports, and I think the thing that we most admire about athletes is they can do things we can't. And Tiger Woods epitomizes that. My favorite moment, maybe, ever, and it's a weird little moment, but, and you know, our moments we pick are always more...
No, but I know what you're about to say. I mean,
they're always more recent ones because they're the freshest ones.
Of course.
So I watched Tiger win by 15 at Pebble Beach. I watched Tiger win by 8 at the Open Championship. I watched him complete the Tiger Slam at Augusta the following year. I watched him win in 97. I watched him beat Steve Scott, win the U.S. Amateur. I mean, I've been there every moment being amazed by him. But last year when he was leading the Masters and stood up on that 17th tee, and the driver has always been a little bit of the Achilles heel of Tiger. He'd do these miraculous things to recover from it, but it was always his Achilles heel a little bit. And I want to talk about his swing in just a moment. But he stood up on 17 last year to win the Masters, and we were all here at the Golf Center watching with a bunch of customers, and he just piped his drive. It was a perfect drive. And I was so nervous I could barely watch. You get that feeling of the enormity of the moment. And Tiger just stood up there and just ripped it. And we watched Kenny Perry give away the Masters with a lead. We've watched so many people over the years not be able to do it as great as they are. But the real incredible, historic people do it in the biggest pressure cooker. And, Michael Jordan used to say everything feels like it's in slow motion. The more pressure goes up, and Gretzky would say the same type of things. Those athletes can do these things that we can't do, and that's what's so amazing. Even, Chris Stevenson, who's a great golf writer up here in Canada and a great hockey writer, and he was at Oakmont following Tiger, I think in 2007, and said Tiger showed up on the tee, and the hair stood up on his neck and like, this guy has a chemistry and a charisma about him that's palpable. Really an interesting individual. Inside the gates of a golf course, maybe you would argue a lot of bad decisions off, or you certainly would be right about that. But
everybody makes bad decisions, right? That's always
not that bad. I mean, you can't.
But nobody else has to go with Tiger's. This is my thing. This has been my thing the whole time. Nobody else had to live with Tiger's life. The attention he got constantly, the pressure that was put on him constantly. I'm not saying he made the right decisions. I'm not saying that they justify it. But to a certain extent, it's not shocking that he made weird decisions in his life. He's barely a human being at this point.
Yeah, it's like the Elvis Presley thing or the Michael Jackson thing. I mean, how do you relate to who they are as human beings? But I mean, there was a systematic kind of bad decisions. It's not like he went out in Vegas one night and made a mistake.
No.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. I'm a golf pro. What Tiger brings to the golf industry, what Tiger brings to my own joy of watching the sport. And when I say brings to the industry, more eyeballs are on the game. More people buy clubs. More people play golf. More people pay attention to golf. More people admire golf and talk about golf. Other athletes saying they go. I mean, you got Michael Phelps sitting behind the tee on 16 when Tiger's winning the Masters, right? The all-time Olympian gold record winner. So he brings a lot to our sport, and for that I'm grateful. And I'm really grateful as a fan, too, to have been around to watch this. We missed out on Bobby Jones, and you missed out on Jack Nicklaus. Yeah, there's a gratefulness to being around this kind of thing.
There is a gratefulness, too. I mean, especially someone, in my generation. I would argue we just missed Gretzky. We just missed Jordan.
Well, I didn't.
No, my generation.
Yeah.
People of my generation,
yeah,
right?
You're right.
We just missed everything. And so being perfectly the age for Tiger Woods has been pretty special. And I think to your point about him being, especially early in his career, this magnanimous, incredible individual, I actually think that's why I like him more now. I'd argue I like Tiger almost more.
It's the American comeback story.
Yeah, and not to mention that he's more human now. And I actually think, there's always been something to learn from Tiger's mental game in terms of how focused he is and how it's important to focus on every shot and really pay attention to your entire game, despite having weaknesses. But I actually think there's more to learn from Tiger now more than ever because, frankly, he has limitations. Now, it's hard to believe I'm saying that because he just won and he looked unbelievable. But he has physical
he's a different
limitations.
golfer.
And the way he plots himself around the course, I think, is something that every golfer can watch and learn something from. Because before, he used to just overpower the course and overpower everybody. And it was, well, what did I learn from that? I just learned that Tiger's awesome. But now, I think watching him play and how incredibly important distance control is on his irons and how he methodically takes apart golf courses, I think you can legitimately learn something from that. And I think, as an interesting parallel, you mentioned at the start of the show, something Rory said this week, parallels that beautifully. He said he almost feels that he's, in a way, better than he was young because he's realized he doesn't have as much time to win as he wants. And he now focuses over every shot in a way he didn't when he was younger. And whether it's a good or a bad round, he's able to focus on every shot, and he recovers better his bad rounds and potentially can score lower on his good rounds because he doesn't lose focus. And I think that's something that, skill level aside, every golfer can relate to. You know, you say, what can I learn from these guys? Well, how about on the 13th hole when you're a little tired, you don't get distracted and blow one into the woods that you maybe not, don't normally do, and make an 8 instead of a 6 in your Sunday best ball game or whatever. I mean, paying attention to how these guys are even talking about how they've had to learn to focus over the course and how they pick courses apart, I think is something that we can all learn from and do better in our own golf games.
Very much so. Very much so. Anyway, just to wrap up on Tiger a little bit, from 99, I think, you could argue 97 because it was a historic win at Augusta National by 12.
I could argue 96.
Yeah, you could. Third U.S. Am. And very strange, too. Anyway, let me finish this thought. From 99 to 05, he was almost a 50% win rate. It was a crazy, crazy number. I don't know if we'll ever see an era like that again. How many wins he had, the percentage of winning. And as you alluded to earlier, not against another boxer like Muhammad Ali beat Kenny Norton or George Foreman.
No, against everybody in the sport.
Oh, from all over the world. It's hard to put it in perspective because baseball doesn't have that global, no one in a lot of parts of the world plays baseball. No one in a lot of parts of the world plays football. So they call themselves world champions, but golf has a reach to every nook and cranny in the world.
Especially now, right? And Tiger's blown that up even further.
Babe Ruth and Gretzky, really. Jordan's records, a lot of them have been passed. The six NBA titles is awesome, but there's other guys who, are in the same conversations of a lot of his stats. Babe Ruth in 1920 hit 54 home runs. His single season record was, he beat it by 25, but so he doubled anyone else who'd ever played the game in home runs in a year. That's a crazy stat.
It is a crazy stat.
Gretzky has more assists than anyone else has points. That's a crazy stat.
Especially considering the era. And I think this is where people think that sometimes we flip-flop on the discussion. We say, well, you have to compare, in some ways, I think Sam Snead's wins some of them are less impressive because of the era. The field wasn't as deep, but the statistics stuff almost becomes more impressive if you can do some of that stuff because the technology wasn't as good and the athletes weren't as good. And that doesn't mean they weren't as athletic. It means they weren't as optimized.
Well, Roger Connor led the all-time home runs before Ruth, who got 714 at 138. So, I mean, those are big numbers.
Yeah.
That's a staggering impressive.
Yeah.
But if I start rhyming off all of Tiger's things, from the cuts made streak to the Tiger Slam to the, 54-hole leads closing the deal to, it's in the same realm. They're staggering numbers, and you got to pay attention. But the winning rate from 99 to 05 is the one that you go, wow, that's crazy. Golf swing. What do you think is? So we've talked silos in the past on this show. In golf, there are many aspects. Most people pay way too much attention to the golf swing. There's ball striking, which is body control, ball spin control, the swing, let's just call it. There's short game, there's putting, there's fitness, there's equipment, there's
emotional and mental.
Emotional and mental intelligence. So you've got 9 or 7 different elements there, and you can add in health and restfulness, and you can just keep going, right? Flexibility. Let's tackle, I think, the 3 for Tiger. I don't know if you put it in the fitness realm or in the swing realm, but the crazy way he hit the ball when he came out on tour compared to everybody else. And I would really encourage people who have only been following golf for the last little while to find some old YouTube video of Tiger hitting the ball in 1996, 7, and 8 when he was a skinny kid. And those hips went so fast, your jaw drops when you watch it. Incredible athletic speed and power. You got to give it that. Maybe with Jack Nicklaus, the best closer ever. Emotional intelligence to the max.
In golf, for sure. I think statistically he is the best closer ever.
And then the putting. I think we don't talk enough about the greatness. Tiger Woods, he's a savant with his equipment. They say he can tell like a half a swing weight point difference. But with the putting too, he's always been very, I don't want to say technical because he's not robotic, but it's not straight back, straight through, just hit it. Tiger talks about releasing the toe of the putter. He talked, Jake, when I was your age, Dave Pells was the guy, and everything was about swinging the triangle back and through, rocking the shoulders. And Tiger came along and he was talking about what his left hand does and what his right hand does and the toe flow of the putter and, a really advanced knowledge of rolling a golf ball and quite an interesting perspective. So I would put the putting, the emotional intelligence, and the fitness as the great three elements that have maybe separated him. And when you're looking at him as a whole golfer, I actually think the swing was the biggest issue. The swing issues for him. I've said many times the two things I think he couldn't control. Number one, rhythm in transition, the dipping the head down and the too quick, his body outrunning his arms, right? And I guess the second one is the dipping the head, letting the head drop too much. So he had swing flaws. He didn't have a perfect golf swing like Adam Scott or a blessed rhythm like Ernie Els or Payne Stewart. He oftentimes fought his swing through his game, but found a way to grind it out with his B or his C game, right?
Well,
and
that's
still win.
And that's why Tiger, I think, used to say those things. I heard a really interesting thing from Brad Faxon. He says one time they walked up to Tiger and said, "Tiger, you got to stop saying, man, that you're winning with your C game. Because
you're beating all of us.
You want to have friends out here, don't you? Like, people are going to get upset with you if you keep saying you're beating us with your C game, just from an ego perspective." But I think what he meant in retrospect, and where I think your point's spot on, is that he did struggle sometimes hitting the golf ball the way he wanted to hit the golf ball. And when you can do that and still win, that's what greatness is, right? That's why everyone talks about that Michael Jordan flu game. Xander actually was sick this week and talked about it. He said, "I'm trying to have my Michael Jordan flu game." I mean, that's why people talk about that, is because when you're not at your best and you succeed, that's really where greatness shines. And I think that
it's an opportunity for sure.
You're right. When you look at, I mean, obviously Tiger's swing is great. I think, it's a little disingenuous to say that it's a flaw in his golf game. But when you look at the fact that it did
driving the golf ball.
Well, driving the golf ball has definitely been a weakness comparatively.
But that's a control of rhythm. So when Tiger's hitting a 6-iron, he's not trying to hit it as far as a 5-iron. So I think his arms and his body sync up better. He doesn't have that urge to hit from the top. One of the great killers of all golf, obviously, you and I are in the trenches with average players, and one of the great flaws is the slice.
Yes.
And there's a lot of reasons people slice a golf ball. We'll have a slice show at some point. But one of them is the urge to hit too fast, right? I've used this analogy with you in the past, the Porsche going into the corner. If you step on the pedal too quick, you end up in the ditch. If you step on the pedal as you're reaching the apex of the turn, you come out of the turn with speed, you win the race.
Absolutely.
There's a time to put the speed on. Tiger Woods hasn't had that in his toolbox. He tries to hit it hard from the top. And many times, he would talk about getting stuck. He would talk about, we just see the ball going way right.
Yeah.
And his body would get out in front of his arms. And so he didn't have that transitional greatness that incredible, consistent ball strikers have, right?
Well, not to mention that aggressiveness from the top manifested in that dip as well, right? Which exacerbated the issue because
so explain that.
So when he dipped his head down, right, there is a reality that if you have a little bit of compression into the turf, if you slightly sit into the shot, you see Justin Rose with his practice drill that he does before every shot, trying to do it.
Jack Nicklaus squat, the Jack Nicklaus squat.
Rory does it by naturally. That's part of why he hits it so far. There's a benefit to the ability then to extend through your downswing and hit the ball hard. However, when you overdo it and you drop and your posture angle changes too much, your head comes down too close to the golf ball, inherently you have to come back up. And that down and up process creates an issue with thrust, your hips coming forward too much, and the club dropping behind you too much. And that's why Tiger would blow it way right, is because as he's coming up and the club drops under plane, he can't rotate the face square fast enough, and the ball blocks way out to in his case, right, as a right-handed player.
And it's, of course, the driver manifests all flaws more. There's less loft on the club.
The club is longer.
The club
spin
is
down.
longer. It's hard to square the face ups,
Yeah.
and forces are working against you. So there's clearly, or it's obvious that the driver is going to be the most difficult. That's why a lot of people we teach say, I hit my 8-iron pretty well, Kevin, but I'm slicing my driver. I'm like, well, you're doing the same thing on everything, but the more horsepower you put into this, the more effort, and and the longer the club with the less loft, it just exaggerates everything.
Well, I think the more that you struggle with your rhythm, the more you'll struggle with your longer clubs, right? I mean, I as a golfer experience that as well. As you said, you've used it with me before. I'm a quick from the top, hit the ball. For whatever reason, my instinct is to hit it. I don't have that natural rhythm that I wish I did. And I notice, when I'm going through swing changes, I can make an iron work pretty well, but the second I get to a longer club, I don't even feel it. But instead of dipping my head, my weight kind of jumps forward to my toes and my hands pull forward and I overcut it or I pull it. And, it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything different with an 8-iron that I'm hitting pretty well or a 6-iron I'm hitting pretty well on my driver. But sometimes it's something you have to fight, and it's something you really have to be aware of. I mean, on the flip side, keep relating Tiger and Rory as we're trying to in the show.
That's his key thought a lot, right?
His key thought is rhythm. And if, he says when he feels like his transition move is slow, he tries to slow it down again. And at the Players' Championship that he won this year, after Saturday, he went to the range to hit golf balls after hitting it great. And everyone asked him, well, why'd you go to hit balls? You were hitting it really good, winning the tournament. And Rory says, I could feel myself quickening. I had to feel the rhythm I needed for Sunday.
Yeah, Hogan, there's an old quote that if he could get the club in the right position halfway down into his downswing, he could hit it as hard as he wanted with his right hand, he said, or with his right side. So meaning once you get that club at parallel to the ground at waist high in the right spot, you just turn the jets on. That's your Porsche, slinging its way around that corner and squaring the club. Tiger never really had the ability to always do it. Now, here's what's interesting about Tiger and all of us. It's adrenaline and it's intensity and fighting the demons if you want to hit the ball hard, if you're a hitter instead of a swinger like Ernie Els. He always looked great on the range. He never blocked it way right. But then he'd get on that first tee and the adrenaline's going, and a lot of people can learn from that. I think it's really interesting that Tiger Woods now, have you noticed how many practice swings he's taking? It seems like his only thought is rhythm and balance. He's taking 3, and if you watch the Zozo, 3 and 4 practice swings. Practice swing, practice swing, practice swing. But they're very rhythmic, level practice swings.
Yeah.
And I can't get in his brain, and I haven't chatted with Tiger to know if he's working on just synchronization of body and arms and rhythm, but it sure looks like it. He's not ripping at it. I always get a kick when people take a really aggressive practice swing, how dysfunctional that really is. But he seems to be, he's certainly a different golfer. He used to overpower the course with brute force, and now he has to, with his age and his injuries and his fused back, he has to control ball flight, control spin, be the ultimate tactician out there and the smartest player, which he is. He's doing it this way. So it's fun to see him win 2 different ways, right?
It's very fun to see him win 2 different ways. And I mean, I heard Jack Nicklaus say after Tiger won the Masters that he thinks Tiger's the best distance control iron player that's ever been, in terms of hitting the ball exactly the distance he needs to hit it on every shot.
I agree. Right? We saw it at the Zozo. It was clinical.
And I think that's part of where that course played disadvantage, right? It was very clear watching that if you were too long, you had a lot of hard putts coming down back to the hole. And if you were too short, you could hit a good shot, but you'd have a long putt because it would roll back. It was a very tiered green golf course.
Let's explain. Well, and we saw that in Rory, who hit a wedge over the back. Rory has had difficulty controlling the spin, the trajectory, and the body motion to be a great short iron player, especially last year. He hit some really funky ones. Let's explain Tiger's swing changes over the years. Let's not too technically, but I think when Tiger came out, a little bit of a strong grip, a little bit of the club getting across the line at the top, maybe arms a little out of position, a little too much behind him, moved a little too much off the ball.
I think it was a very obvious young player who focused on power and was a super athlete, but maybe wasn't as clean as it should have been. Yeah.
And what was your thing you said on the radio? Butch Harmon, who worked with him from 93 to 04, I think. What was your saying? He had to put a saddle on the horse?
Yeah. Butch said most of the time he was teaching him, he was just trying to put a saddle on the bucking bronco, trying to figure out how to handle that raw energy and turn it into a player. And one thing, there's this great article he actually wrote for Golf Digest that I go back to and read. He goes, the things I learned from each of my players. And the thing he said he learned about Tiger, one, was that he had to learn how to motivate Tiger, how to get him to change and work on things, and how to improve himself. He tells this story about, he was trying to get Tiger to high cut because, like you said, he was such a...
he was susceptible to a hook.
Yeah.
When he was young, because the club was across the line, his arms were behind him. So coming down into the ball, they get underplane, and that body was so fast. Again, go to YouTube and look at some old swings of young Tiger. It is, I mean, it makes Rory almost look calm. It is crazy.
Yeah, it is wild
how fast he turned.
And so Butch was saying he was trying to get Tiger to have that shot in his Rolodex with a long iron, the high cut, to be able to use it in certain situations, especially getting to a tucked right pin. And he said Tiger couldn't figure it out, and he was frustrated. And at one point, Butch said, "Look, man, I don't think you can do it at this point. Why don't we make a bet? Why don't you try to hit?" And I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but there was a gap in the fence at this driving range they were at. Why don't you try to hit a cut through that? Let's see if you can do it. And Tiger, first try, got it.
Yeah.
And he said at that point he realized he needed to challenge Tiger to achieve something, and he could change it.
Good story.
And I think that, one, as a golf teacher, that shows you that everybody has to be approached differently, and you have to figure out what's the best way for you to improve and you to practice, and as teachers, for us to get that out of somebody. But I think it also shows how a lot of Tiger's early golf swing was raw physical talent, and he had to become more of a technician with the artistry.
Yeah, I think without question, Butch kept his arms in front of him more. One of the great influence in our golf school, certainly in my swing philosophy, is so many people want to wind up like tops, and the arms get way behind their head, and your arms are behind you, out of position at that point. And Butch really put him in a great position at the top. Some would say he shortened it. I would say he got his arms in a better position in front of his body, and really made Tiger hit thousands of shots with a stop at the top drill, which, again, if you're listening or watching, is a great drill. Go to the top, stop, and then count to 2 or 3, and then hit the ball. And it synchronizes that vertical arm swing with that winding body. And if you can get your timing better doing that, you'll hit the ball so much more solid. But it's almost impossible to do if you either sway your body out of position or come up out of posture and your body's really off, out of position. Absolutely. But in Tiger's case, arms too far around, just across the line, maybe too big a swing. And he really calmed down. I think Tiger's footwork got so much more subtle under Butch. His arm position stayed more connected to him, and he shortened it up, and it was sure great. I don't know why he left Butch. Some of me thinks that Butch was getting a lot of attention, and a young Tiger Woods probably didn't like that. Maybe he still felt stuck. The drop-down move, I've never read anything about Butch talking about how to keep Tiger from dropping and kind of getting stuck like an accordion, like you said, increasing posture lines, and then there's no room for the club, and you're not turning well because you're spending your time moving up and down. I don't know, but he decided through the influence of Marco Mira then to go to Hank Haney and created something a little different. It was more of a rounder swing. Maybe that was an effort to stay more level. Don't know. Although Hank Haney in his book said that he talked to Tiger about dropping, and Tiger refused to change that part of his move or something to that effect. Tiger wouldn't change that.
Well, I think Tiger, before the pressure data and stuff that we had now, intuitively understood that compression in the turf was part of his ability to hit the ball hard.
Yeah.
I would argue that you look at those 1997 videos you're referencing, and Tiger's the most level there that he ever was, and he was arguably pound for pound the most powerful he ever was. So I think that obviously get carried away, and I do think as people are passionate about golf and looking at Instagram and looking at YouTube about golf swing stuff, that maybe in the last decade especially, some pros have gotten a little too carried away with the idea of footwork and compression and increasing of the power and forgotten the holistic golf swing as a part of it. But I think Tiger intuitively understood that was part of his game and maybe focused on it too much himself.
One of the things I do like, though, Jake, we use Body Track Matt here, but there's Swing Catalyst and others, and about ground force understanding is people, when they understand their footwork, they tend to get more rhythmic, and when their feet do the right things, their legs are a little quieter. The whole thing improves. So I think it's a wonderful thing. And, we've had people hitting sock feet to feel where the weight is in their feet. It's got to travel from the middle of your feet, just in the forward part of your arches, into the inside back heel, and then forward to the outside kind of pad behind your baby toe on your lead foot, and then into the heel. And if you can trace that properly and really pay attention to your footwork, I think you can be a better golfer. And I think that's another thing that Butch did for Tiger in getting that saddle on that bucking Bronco, is he introduced more rhythm into the game and more subtlety into the game, right? And
For sure.
and then Tiger would have more shots.
Yeah, for the record, I'm not talking against the concept. I've worked more on my footwork in the last
Totally understand
8 years
that.
of
Yeah,
my
yeah,
golf swing
totally
than I've worked
understand
on anything else in my own golf swing too. I think it's really important, but I just mean that
There's more to it.
you can't overdo anything.
Yep.
Right? You can overdo any good thing in the golf swing, and unfortunately, as teaching pros, we tend to chase the rabbit hole. That's the newest to us and the newest thing that we've understood. But
Yeah, so
you're right. So turning more level, he started swinging a little more flat, and he also started opening the club face a little bit to
a little more
compensate
rotation.
for it.
Well, weaker hand to start. Maybe again an effort to make it more neutral. I don't know what.
Well,
that,
it would definitely fight the big left miss, right?
Yeah.
His proclivity to hook early in his career. If you slightly weaken your grip, there's going to be a natural rotation open of the face through impact, and it's going to tend to work against your natural.
It might also lead you to
desire to
roll
hands.
the arms a little more in the backswing, which he did, a little less wrist hinge.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, I don't think he needed to make those changes because of a hook as of 2000 when he was with Butch. Maybe in 97 he needed to
Yeah.
get rid of those things. But I think Marco Mira had a great influence on him. Hank Haney's done a wonderful job with some players. Marco Mira, one of them. His success winning a couple of majors and at Pebble Beach. But Marco Mira was a great player and a really good putter.
I also don't think Hank Haney did a bad job with Tiger. Tiger, arguably, in
Winning percentage
2004,
was
2005,
great.
2006, was as good as he ever was. Just not.
Yeah, I don't think any of us who really understood the motion of the game ever liked the move as much. And it didn't look as beautiful under Haney. It just didn't quite look the same. But Tiger wanting to get better. My brother John, who's an emotional intelligence expert and a former world touring pro himself, says Tiger sets his own standard. He admires that. He's willing to change everything to get better, and that's admirable. I say, holy crap, you're messing with the Mona Lisa. Like, let's not touch it up anymore. It's great. So there's an argument there. Tiger did what he did, tried to get better, moved to Hank Haney, weakened his grip, took some hinge out, made his swing a little rounder, still had success. Then moved on to Sean Foley, who at the time when Sean came out on tour there was a stack and tilt influence a little bit, staying on the lead leg, a little steeper, more of an up and down move. I never liked any of that for Tiger Woods. In my mind, from early days, Tiger's problem was, like as we've said, is dropping, and to have more vertical thought and to stay on the lead leg more. I never really understood why that would make you a better driver. I think the demise of the stack and tilt golf swing as a cover of Golf Digest success was that you can't drive the ball like that. You can stay on your lead leg and work your pelvis that way to hit those clean little 8-irons and wedges, but it's a really difficult way to swing a golf club as a driver, and Tiger's weakness was the driver, so I don't understand why he was drawn to that.
Well, not only that, but I mean, especially we're talking about the pressure shifts and everything now, it's inherently flawed logic. Staying onto your lead leg, to the concept of it allows you to stay very centered, very rotational, and keep your arms in front of you, makes sense until you start thinking about it from a grand scale, because if you don't allow the pressure to turn into your back thigh properly by slightly, in some cases, moving off the ball by an inch or two, you're not able to then shift into your front leg properly and then clear your hip the way you need to actually rotate through the ball with a square face. So it keeps you in front of the golf ball, but it doesn't give you that rotational turn through.
I also think it's a power bleed. I mean, a pitcher in baseball doesn't stay on his lead leg and throw the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a power league as well. So, but I just never understood it. I don't think Sean has evolved as a teacher. If you look at Sean Foley's tips, if you do a historic Google search,
They're extraordinarily different.
yeah, he's evolved, which is okay. That's allowed. But I think Tiger really turned left at Albuquerque.
For
If
the
he's
record-
Bugs Bunny, man, he went down the wrong tunnel at Albuquerque because I don't think that was the right move. I think Sean, though, is a brilliant communicator and a motivator. Very different than Butch Harmon, who'd tell you a dirty joke on the first tee to relax you. And Sean Foley would quote a 16th century philosopher, right, to inspire you. So very different. Another growth thing for Tiger, potentially. Even as a human being, maybe Sean was a great influence.
Well, I think at that time, Tiger, obviously, this is post-controversy, was searching for something different and searching for a way to figure out how to come back and deal with the fact that his back was starting to fail and all these things. And I think he felt like originally he found that in Sean. I agree with you. I don't think it was the best thing for him. I don't think adding verticality to a already stuck golfer.
Well,
makes
that's
a lot
what
of
we
sense.
think, right? That's our opinion. And then Chris Como, we don't really know because it was injuries and off-course stuff and the DUI. And but I think Chris Como is a very smart coach again. I kind of argued after Hank, why does he need another coach? Like at the time, Steve Williams, now Joe LaCava, who caddied for Couples for so many years. All Tiger needs, and that's what he's doing now, and I love it now. This is another thing I really like about Tiger, whatever .0 this is, that having taught the golf swing and studied it my entire life, I don't need a coach. I maybe need you to stand behind me and say, hey, Jake, tell me if the club's outside. Hey, Jake, tell me if I'm changing posture angles. Hey, Jake, tell me if I'm square when I stand over the ball. You need a pair of eyes, but I know what to look for when I watch the video. So, I kind of wish after Haime, Tiger would have maybe consulted with people and used them as, but not had a coach and worked on changing a complete motion.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I think it's ironic that we're teaching pros saying get away from the teachers, but I think there does get to a certain point where you transcend with your understanding of the golf swing in your game and you own your own swing, that the need to have somebody tell you what to do, right? A second pair of eyes to make sure that you're not only looking at the wrong thing is a good thing, I still think. I think that's why most tour players have a coach. It's to help them stay on the rails and not get too distracted by
a
certain
lot
elements.
of tour pros need a coach. A lot of tour pros don't understand the biomechanics and the 3D motion capture analysis of a golf swing. They're good college players. They're good high school players. They come out of wherever they come out of. You think of a guy like Bubba Watson. Like, he needs explanation on the biomechanics of the motion. And no, you got to be very careful. Some players play better with less information because they just inherently do it through instinct and talent. But some still do. But I just didn't think Tiger Woods did at that stage. So, and I love where he is right now. He's got probably good people keeping an eye on things. He's watching it himself. Joe LaCava is a wonderful source. I really do think that. I mean, can you imagine a tour pro for Fred Couples and then for Tiger, how much he knows about the golf swing and the flight of the ball and what it should look like and sound like and, what the address position should look like? He'd have a great eye for that stuff. Bones Mackay is doing an awesome job commentating on television.
Yeah, I really like him.
Being, Phil's caddy. I mean, there's a pedigree. Caddies don't get enough credit.
By the way, can we just quickly note it, and I was not a Phil fan as a kid, but call out, I mean, he just came out of the top 50 this week. Phil Mickelson had been in the top 50 players in the world since 1993. I mean, that is an incredible run that deserves massive respect. I mean, Bones was on the bag for a lot of that. But I just quick shout out. I mean, that's an unbelievable thing that deserves recognition as well. In a week where we're all celebrating Tiger because of his historic victory, I think, Phil deserves some credit, too, for his longevity in his career so far. And he might get in the top 50 again, who knows? But that streak was pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's really entertaining himself with social media and all kinds of other things now. I'm not sure. I wish they'd have hired him for the tower. I think he'd be a very interesting guy.
I don't think he's done playing enough, but he'd be so good.
Tiger's putting. We got to talk about it for a minute.
Well, quickly,
we still got to tackle Rory. Hey, we still got to get to Rory. We still got to get to the CBS thing a little bit.
I know, but we're talking about Tiger's
We're almost
swing,
an hour in here.
Can we finish off quickly?
Yes.
what I like about his move now, because I think what's happened now is he's almost returned to where he was with Butch in a big way, right? His arms are as in front of him as they've ever been. His turn is as level as they've ever been. But what I really like about his golf swing now is he's gone away from that slight opening of the face and roundedness that you talked about with Haime, right? His face now from
very neutral
address to the 9 o'clock position, waist high to the ground, is incredibly neutral. And what it's allowed him to do with his fuse back, he has to turn more level now on the way through, and he has to really exit left.
He's hitting it
right?
with his body instead of
Agreed.
moving his hands and arms around.
So if you watch his golf swing now, he's always exited left on lower shots, but he's really doing a lot of it on his full swing in every shot now. Even his higher draws, he's turning his upper body through the ball faster than he used to.
One thing that I would say for listeners, if you can get your takeaway mastered, great setup, grip, stance, posture, alignment, and Tiger, by the way, through every swing, he had a little more weight on his lead leg through the Foley years, but has always had a wonderfully consistent setup. It's been awesome through 3 decades.
I heard Jordan Spieth in an interview say the most impressive thing about Tiger, apart from obviously the success that he had, was that he was able to have a perfectly consistent address position for 40 years. Not many pros can do that.
No, it's an attention to detail and an intelligence to stay there and pay attention to it. But your takeaway, a lot of us Canadians are moving inside. If you can stand perfectly over the ball and you can swing it away to waist high on the right line, and then you just kind of continue to the top, you get so much better. So I'd consider a golf lesson just on your takeaway and what it should feel like and look like. And everybody can do it, because you don't need athletic speed and strength to do it. You just need to swing the club on the right path. But one of the keys, which I'd really like people to focus on, if you think about your trailing wrist, so the right wrist for a right-handed player, as you swing the club up to waist high, you don't want that wrist, extending at all, that back wrist. You want it staying at whatever angle it starts on as the club swings to waist high. In other words, a little hinge is okay as the toe of the club starts working up, as your arms are swinging up. A little bit of hinge, thumbs up. But you do not want any kind of extension, flexion, and much rotation in the forearms as you do that. Keep it, when we call it neutral, means keep it where it started. Just turn the chest, swing the arms, and keep the hands and wrists and forearms very quiet. And Tiger's club face now points so much more at the ball when he swung his club like 1.5 feet away, compared to the Haime years where he kind of got it rolling a little bit and opening.
Yeah.
Probably, again, as you said, to fight the hook and make the swing a little rounder. But now it's so neutral. His wrists are in a wonderful position. Get a bunch of stop action pictures of Tiger or video and stop it and look at how quiet his wrists are and how neutral they are through the takeaway at the top, through 3/4 through his follow through. Very neutral.
And that's what I love about his swing now, is that it's this version of his golf swing where, because his hands are so neutral, he is able to use that rotation through the golf ball to just hit the golf ball using rotation, which means you have very little grip roll, very little flipping or turning over of your hands at impact, and especially off an iron, that makes you wildly consistent.
Yeah.
Because if you can just use your body's rotation to hit the golf ball after the bump into the front leg to shift the pressure there in the first place, you are able to hit the ball with such squareness of face that it's hard to miss hit a shot.
Yeah,
I mean,
the face is always square, so you're just turning into. It's like putting.
Yeah.
If you don't roll the toe open and shut, if you just kind of swing it, and it's always neutral, you got a lot better chance. It's the exact same analogy on a bigger motion.
Yeah, and to use another example, I mean, that's why DJ's driving has turned to a fade instead of the big draws he used to hit, and that's why he's gotten so consistent. DJ hits a slight fade because all he does is turn through the ball like mad, and he's turning through the ball so much that he almost winds up hitting a slight across the ball path at impact. So a lot of these players are going to more of this golf swing as they're realizing that quieter hands is a
If you're listening to this show or podcast and you're one of these players who likes to release it with the hands, you're way out of position. There is no release with the hands. It's a natural, neutral motion that happens based on the proper motion.
You know what I hate more than anything in a lesson? Not hate, but I just shake my head at. We're in Canada, right? So we get a lot of people who spend snowbird winters down in Florida, and people might take a golf lesson down there while they're playing a bunch if they're struggling. And I don't know what it is about Florida, apparently, but the amount of people that say, yeah, I got this lesson down in Florida or down in Texas when I was down south. He said, just hit it with my backhand more to stop slicing it.
Yeah, that's just a funny little thing that you've experienced. I don't think it's a trend down there, but
No,
it
no,
is
no, of
awful.
course not.
If you're
Yeah.
trying to beat a slice, if you're trying to do something, and the answer is either to strengthen your grip or use your hands to square the club, that instructor doesn't know what he's talking about. That is not good advice. So right now it's so neutral, right? And the rhythm is so good. Okay, putting. Come on, we got to move on. Tiger's putting. Again, I think revolutionary. I mean, when I was young, Dave Pell said straight back and straight through, rock the shoulders. That's what everybody tried to do. And maybe I'm exaggerating, but that was my life experience at the University of Illinois with, NCAA level players. And as a young pro, it was back and through and back and through and back and through. And, the putter should swing on an arc. I mean, it's very clear that because the golf shaft's on a 20-degree angle on average, as you turn the shoulders and swing your arms, the putter should open and close.
Yeah, just think of it like a 7-iron, everybody. I mean, when you swing your 7-iron, it moves around your body because the shaft's at an angle. And the exact same thing is true when you putt. When you actually swing a putter back.
I must have been an idiot thinking straight back. All of us must have been. When that was being taught, I mean, didn't anyone think, hey, the shaft's on an angle, there should be an arc to this? I sure didn't.
Well, the answer is engineers eventually went, hold on a second, and then it clued in, right? Because the logic of straight back and straight through, I can understand where it comes from. If you keep the head on a perfect line and the face stays square at all moments, in theory, you should hit a perfect putt.
But it's not a natural motion.
No, that's the problem, right? Because if you're swinging the head straight back because of that angle, the shaft is bowing out.
I swear to God, Jake, I graduated college in 1987. I can still remember Tiger saying, I'm releasing the toe of the putter. This is probably U.S. amateur time.
Yeah.
And I was barely teaching at the time, late 80s, early 90s. I was just starting.
What must have sounded?
And I'm like, release the putter. What is he talking about? He releases the putter, But I just think that we just didn't understand, the absolute motion of the putting stroke, but Tiger sure did. And that idea of, that natural flow of the putter, where it's just allowed to swing a little open going back. Now, the face should stay square to the path.
Yes.
So if the path is on a slight arc, we want the face to stay square. We're not giving people a free rein to flip their forearms around or use their wrists.
No, for the same reason we just said that's bad in a full swing. The more that you have to roll your wrists inherently at impact in any strike of the golf ball, the less consistent you're going to be. The example I use is it's like a cowboy walking through a saloon door that's swinging too quickly. You might occasionally get your ass hit and fall over. Right? If you can keep your hands as simple as possible.
How long did it take you to come up with that one? The saloon door one, because it seems like a go-to.
I don't know. It's a
go-to one.
I use it a lot. I don't know when I came up with it, but I like it.
Well, the other thing about releasing the putter head and letting it flow is you have to be very soft in your putter grip, which I think is another thing we teach. Any tension in the hands is a killer. And Tiger does a lot of his practicing. He always does a gate drill. He'll have a tee on the toe and the heel, so he keeps his path and really focused on it being in the exact spot at impact it was addressed. To hit the ball in the same spot. Oh, my God, did you see on Twitter, there was a picture of his putter face. There's a wear mark.
On the middle of the putter face.
Oh, my God. I mean, how many putts would you have to hit with the force of a putt? Like you're just barely touching the ball to create a wear mark on a putter. How many millions and millions? It's like erosion on river rock, right? Water has to flow over that rock forever to smooth the edges.
It's actually
he's got a wear mark on his putter face. But so he does that. The little gate thing, you put a little tee or even a little inside in the winter, something just outside the toe and just outside the heel at impact or at address to make sure you come through on the exact same path. And he also putts a lot with one hand. And you can putt with your trailing arm or your lead arm. But when you just swing the putter with one arm or the other, it really allows it to open and close. It's very hard to manipulate it and keep it, either keep it straight back, straight through, or to not let the toe flow open and closed a little bit. And I just think the way Tiger lets the putter release, and one of the most amazing things to me is in a situation where I might have poop streaming down the back of my leg because a billion people are watching me try to make a putt. that he is still so relaxed, no tension in the hands, and lets the putter flow open and flow closed under that degree of pressure. That really tells you how emotionally strong and incredible he is. That, we've seen a lot of guys miss 3-foot putts under pressure because they're nervous and the hands get a little tighter and they force the putter. Tiger just never lets that happen, even under the most immense pressure possible.
That's why we say there's so much more artistry in putting than it feels like there is in the rest of the golf
Softness,
swing, right?
There's more softness.
You have to be able to almost feel like you're flowing the ball into the hole. There's a sound philosophical and cheesy, a connection to you and the turf of getting that ball to roll as quickly as you can through a technically good stroke, and then make the ball go in the hole. And that's why it always felt to me, watching it growing up, that Tiger was willing the ball in. Like when it was Tiger Woods, you'd stand there and go, well, yeah, of course he's going to make it. His will is
But he knew it. He knew it. What's the line there? It was about Nicholas from Wisecup. He knew he'd make it. We knew he'd make it. And we knew he'd make it. So he's unbeatable. The irony there, though, there's a little irony there, Jake, in the fact that he never had rhythm problems putting. So that quickness from the top, that accordion dropping of the head, that getting stuck. I know, but you would think a guy who would his urge to hit is the flaw. Sometimes with that putter, he'd squeeze a little hard and pull it. Or I can't remember too many. You ever remember any worm's eye view of Tiger's putt where he just pulled it badly because his right hand took over or something? Like, it's been an amazing 3 decades of consistency. One of the most unbelievable stats of Tiger, and then let's move on to Rory a little here, but there's a stat about him with the putts. It's something like from 99 to 05, he had, or 99 to 02, he had something like 1,500 putts and he missed 3 of them. 1,500 putts under 3 feet or shorter, and he missed 3 of them.
Yeah, and
here we go. From 2000, it's a little later actually. From 2002 to 2005, Woods had 1,540 putts from 3 feet. On the PGA Tour, he only missed 3 of them. 3 out of 1,540. And a 3-foot putt is not a gimme. And PGA Tour pins are difficult and greens are slick. So you've got these sliders.
If you make any mistake and you don't hit the ball in your intended starting line, the ball could easily miss.
To get your wear mark on your putter. My putter will never have a wear mark on. I don't practice enough.
You change putters too much when you don't putt.
Yeah. And I don't think I hit the same spot as often. I mean, the consistency is remarkable.
Staggering. It is staggering. One thing...
All right, what do you want to say about Rory? Let's jump to Rory.
Well...
That's a lot of Tiger love.
I think that one thing that... apart from Rory's had, such an incredible year that it's hard to fathom is the wrong word because we're talking about Tiger Woods who did...
I'm waiting for more out of Rory. I keep waiting. Don't you keep waiting for more? When he won at Congressional by 8, he won a couple of majors by 8. I know this year was amazing. I don't know why, but I keep expecting more.
You know what? You know why? Because I'm struggling with that too. It's because we care about majors proportionally more than everything else. If you look at... So I saw this after he won it in China.
Yeah.
Okay. In Rory's 24 World Starts in 2019, the calendar year 2019, 4 wins, 13 top 6s, 18 top 10s. The problem is that one of his missed cuts, one of the only 6 events he didn't come top 10 was in Portrush.
This can't be a great year because of that.
In all of those things, right? In the majors.
You agree with me? This cannot be a historic year because of Portrush. It doesn't matter what else he did. He could have won 15 times. I'd still say.
But I think we inherently see Portrush differently, right? I know that he blew Portrush because of the opening round, but I actually think, and I said this at Portrush, and I'm going to hold to it, that I think Portrush was a turning point in Rory's career. I think that moment, I could be wrong, but I think that's going to get the schneid off his back, and that's why he's going to win a major in the next couple of years.
You're going to win the Masters this year?
That's really hard. Well, I think I want Tiger to repeat at the Masters, so I don't know that I can want Rory to win. But I think there's a chance. That might be too quick a turnaround.
Well, there's a chance.
I think we see a different Rory at the end of this year than we do at the start of 2018.
Wait a minute. What did you say? It's too soon, or you kind of mumbled a half sentence there? You think it's too soon for Rory, or what did you say? Like you said, he think he can win. We know he can win it. We know Rory McIlroy can win the
No. I'm not saying it's too
year.
soon. I'm saying it's too soon to say like it's going to be this time. I don't know when it's going to be that he wins the Masters. I think he's going to win the Masters at some point. But I think Rory McIlroy is a different golfer today than he was at the start of 2018. And I think that's true for two reasons. I think number one, the putting change, talking about how brilliant Tiger's putting is, the putting change has been a game changer for Rory, right? Him talking to Faxon and going back to something that's more natural to him has been game changing.
So tell people what Faxon said to him or what he changed, because they may not know.
So one of the things that Faxon, as he started to coach some players, has become famous for as a putting coach is a little bit more of a naturalistic, artistic approach, more like Tiger, who's thinking of putting as looking at the green and flowing the ball into the hole.
More like Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
Be the ball, Billy.
Instead of getting a little too technical potentially, right? And Faxon, we were in the room when he told the story. It was a great story. Talked about, he was with Rory, and he said, it's the first time them working together putting. And Faxon says he was excited. He's not really, hadn't been a coach at that point. He was excited to get to work with Rory. And he said, what are you working on your putting stroke? And Rory said about 4 or 5 different technical things he was trying to do.
I think he said, what are you thinking of? Or did he or not? And then he said, what do you think when you drive? Is this the story? Yeah.
So he said, what do you think of and what do you work on in your putting? And he gave him 4 to 5 things. A couple days earlier, he had been with Rory at a golf tournament, and they had been watching leave an unnamed player hit a drive or working on something. And Rory turned to Faxon and said, can you believe he's thinking all those different things every time he hits a golf ball? I don't think of a bloody thing when I hit a golf ball with my driver. I just hit the ball when I'm over the ball. That doesn't mean he doesn't have swing thoughts. He has swing thoughts that he works on, but during the round, he just hits it, right? And so Faxon says to Rory, you're thinking a lot when you putt. If I asked you to think more putting like you do when you drive, would you be open to that? And Rory said, I'd give anything to be able to do that. And Faxon said, okay, then roll the ball in the hole. And they actually started doing putting contests to get Rory to feel and compete a little more when he putt and have some fun putting. And it totally changed his putting.
Amazing.
And I think that, him going to a more flowing, natural approach to his stroke and remembering that seeing the line and seeing the hole and feeling the putt out is an important part of this equation. It's not all about maximizing your technical ability. I think was incredibly important for him. And I think it's something that's incredibly important for all golfers. We're golf coaches.
Yeah, but if you have a lot of flaws, like if your aim is wrong and you're moving around.
Totally given. So you have to get...
We talk to different people, right, Jake? I think, when you said earlier, people might be surprised that we think Tiger doesn't need a coach because we're coaches. I mean, what we're doing is showing a person how to hold the golf club and the path. They don't understand. I think if anyone listens to this and says, well, Brad Faxon says, just feel it. I don't need a lesson. I mean, that's a load of bunk. Like, your stroke is nowhere near Rory McIlroy.
And for the record, Faxon would say that too, because I've heard Faxon in a later interview talking about how he works with Rory, saying they do make technical changes to Rory's putting. It's just that you want to make the technical changes and practice them in a certain way that you feel confident about them. So then when you're over a pressure putt, whether it be for $1 in your Sunday game or to win a major, you can allow the putter to flow naturally with the stroke you've built.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean you don't need technical work. It just means you need to let the artistry be part of it. Faxon talked a lot about how his eyes were a big part of his putting and how he had to learn. He says a lot of people have always said to him that he was lucky he was born a putter, and he resents that. He says, I caddied at home, and I learned how to read a green and how to roll a ball in the hole. And it's something that...
it is a skill.
It's something you have to develop.
If it was natural, or if, I don't know, if you didn't have to work at it, isn't everybody good at it?
Well, there's some truth. Some people are naturally better and can maybe develop the skill faster. But it's something you have to learn to do. Right?
I think rhythm, Jake, is a huge deal. There's the irony. Tiger has great putting rhythm, but fights with the driver.
And
Rory has great driver rhythm, but can't seem to just allow that to happen with the putter. I had a blast motion. There's a good segue just to finish up our putting. I had a blast motion session with a fella this week, and it's supposed to be 2-to-1. 2 parts back, 1 part forward is the proper rhythm, the tested, confirmed, with professionals, rhythm of a putting stroke. So it's, what we like to say is a positive notation to people is that their backstroke should be make more and their forward stroke should be putts. Make more putts. Make more putts. And gravity, of course, and forward motion is the reason why it's a 2-to-1.
There's a slight
grandfather clock swings down faster than it swings up. It's just gravity.
Yeah.
So it's a 2-to-1. Again, back in the 80s, same pace back and through. So we've learned so much with testing and science and biomechanics and everything. Make more putts. Make more putts. And Brad Faxon is kind of the, I don't know, I mean, he's on staff with Blast Motion. He's the paid endorser. He helps them a lot with developing a lot of their drills and videos they do. And so he's connected to this Blast Motion, which is a little accelerometer on the end of your putter that tells you what your face is doing as far as rotation, how quickly your putter's moving, the rhythm of it, if it's a 2-to-1 or different. And I give it Blast Motion. I think, would you agree with me that their number one parameter that they say is most important is rhythm? I mean, everything
Yes.
matters.
I would say that absolutely everything matters. But if we accept the conclusion that distance control, especially for amateurs,
Natural
is the most
rhythm,
important
right?
element to putting, then natural rhythm is going to be the most.
So this
important
fellow was
element.
3-to-1, 3.2-to-1. First putt. Gets on my
Very
putting
hitty.
studio. We put the accelerometer on the end of the putter, and back he goes, 3.2-to-1. So make more putts, hit.
And
Like,
for context, what kind of player is this guy? Is he a good player, medium player?
mid-80s, you know.
So
not a bad player.
Pretty
But
good golfer.
here's the
in the grand scheme
deal.
of things.
First thing I said to him, you watching the putter? Yep. So he
Yeah.
is tracking that putter back with his
There
eyes,
you go.
right? And
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, stay on line, stay on line, stay on line, hit the ball. So there's nothing natural about the motion.
No.
You can't watch the putter. You can't guide your putter.
No, I've never heard a good tour player say, "Oh, I watched the putter and it goes great."
Yeah, or I'm forcing the putter on a certain line. But whenever you have that longer backstroke and that quicker hit into it,
Yeah.
it's normally a conscious effort to control things, and you really can't control the putter. You got to let it flow, right? That's the soft hands and swinging the putter.
In a controlled manner.
Yeah. So
Right.
2-to-1, everyone. It's always 2-to-1. If you have a 4-foot putt or a 3-foot putt that Tiger never missed from 2002 to 2005, it's maybe on that little putt 5 inches back, 4 inches forward. It's whatever it is. On a 10-foot putt, it's 8 inches back and 8 inches through, whatever it is. On a 30-foot putt, it's 14 inches back, 40, but it's always 2-to-1 rhythm. Make more putts. Make more putts.
Well, and that's the real secret to getting rid of 3 putts and stuff too, isn't it? Because
distance control.
if you can make your only variable in how hard you hit the putt the length of the stroke, which is more easily controlled than any other element, then your distance control is going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
Totally different. Totally
Which
different.
is the key. You're right. You know, I talk a lot about curling and putting, and it's about throwing hack weight or whatever weight you want to throw, right? Or I guess T-line is that what they call it? T-line weight? Is that the line at the?
I like
I
curling,
know,
but
right
I'm
at
not
the
into
center of
enough
the
to-
curling
yeah.
rink, right?
The
At
button.
The button.
The button. I got the button.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just throw it to the button, right? Let's have that pace every single time. It's like throwing a curling stone like that, controlling that rhythm. Want the same thing with our putting. You never 3-putt if your ball ends up hole high, or almost never. If you misread it
gonna
by
be pretty
4
hard,
feet,
yeah.
you might. But if you're always hole high, like Tiger is with his irons, the game gets much easier.
For sure.
Let's finish with CBS. 3 minutes. They let Costas and McCord go. What do you think of that?
I didn't have a problem with Costas and McCord. I don't think that they were the problem with CBS's coverage, but I'm also not upset that they're gone.
I think it was time.
Yeah, I think, they had both had their tenure. Their contracts probably were incredibly big considering how long they had been there. I understand why CBS is moving on
It's
from
stale, right? Everything's
It is.
stale. I know Peter Costas is quite upset about loyalty, and he'd like to leave on his terms and everything, and I do get that. But all business is about money, and if ratings are down and someone at the top thinks a change needs to be done to really change things.
Well, it's also great that you want to leave it on your own terms. No kidding, you want to leave on your own terms, but you don't always get to, It's especially
No,
when
I'm
your
just
terms
saying,
are, I
though,
want a
I
full
mean-
another year to say goodbye every week.
Yeah.
Unreasonable terms, Mr. Costas.
Yeah.
I-
I did hear they were willing to let him come back to the farmers and the waste management to kind of have a couple of weeks to do that, and he said no thanks. So there's some bad blood there. Listen, Peter Costas, I think, could have stayed. I am tired of the Gary McCord thing. I think everyone's knocking Gary, much like the Sam Snead record thing I said earlier. I mean, you don't do that. He's been a
No, I don't
part
dislike
of
Gary McCord.
mainstream golf for a
Yeah.
long time. He's a witty guy, but any joke told by a guy for 20-some years gets old. You need fresh things. And I really think network TV in general, I'm not sure Davis Love is the answer here. I think network TV, as you said, it's not so much about McCord and Costas, but can we please see more golf? Can we please get more insights? Can we not just see the obvious stuff, the guy's making the putts, and then say something witty and move on to the next hole?
And that's why I don't think that those two guys are the problem, because golf right now,
the formula's off, I think, for millennials especially.
Very far off. And it's only getting more far off because, the playing through, as great as it is being manipulated in a way that it's too much, and we're getting so many more ads. I mean, I'll put it this way. When I'm watching Tiger win his 82nd win in Japan in primetime television, and I'm almost getting distracted because there's so many ads, I'm having trouble focusing on what's going on.
Well, that's a money thing that maybe we can't control. Listen, when Tiger Woods is in the hunt, or when it's very compelling, like the Ryder Cup, I'm all in. I'll watch anything.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I'll wake up at
in.
3 a.m. to watch the Ryder Cup.
But they need to find a way. It's a very interesting problem because your generation is into podcasts and more honesty, and there is a sense of smart alecky-ness. I don't know if that's needed, but you don't want to alienate the older viewer, many of whom are golfers, but you need to bring fresh eyes into the sport. It's very difficult, but they got to really shake things up. I don't think just taking one guy out of the booth and putting in a different guy is the answer here. I think golf, Top Tracer has done a lot to make it somewhat better with the line, right? And we're Top Tracer people here at our golf center and love the technology.
But regardless
and it makes
of
it
our
more
use
fun
of
to
it,
watch.
I couldn't believe how much I missed it watching the Zozo, even though I loved watching the tournament. Yeah.
It's neat to see that ball. And Tiger's balls are these days when he's controlling flight are so intriguing because he draws some and fades some and higher and lower. Or how about Bubba's tee shot on that one hole?
I know,
where he hit over by the sign. Well, I think they did. They kind of showed. I saw it in a still photo, the arc of it and everything. But very neat, very neat. I didn't see that live ever. I don't know why they didn't show that. But anyway, too bad for those guys. A little bit of good riddance by me though. Enough. You had your run. That's great. Sorry, like Bob Cole in hockey. It's time.
There's a time when you're done, for sure.
The question is what we would like to see now. I don't necessarily want the podcast smart alecky thing.
I don't think that's a fair assessment, by the way, but I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Though a lot of them are like that, just average Joes saying what's on their mind, and it's intriguing banter, right? Like it's almost like listening to guys having a beer and a pizza and talking, and they swear a little bit, and it's more real. It's more. I'm just talking about that type of podcast, which is popular today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. For sure. I get what you're saying. I don't agree with you, but I get what you're saying. I also
the old guy's perception of podcasts.
I also don't necessarily want that sort of format in broadcast. I think there's a place for some gravitas on sports coverage.
I would love to see. I would love to see, Jake, more analysis and real insights.
Well, analysis of different things, right?
Which means you have to have, and I think Peter Costas had the Minolta Konica swing vision, which is pretty cool. But I'd like I've never heard anyone say, "Oh, he hit that," really. And Johnny Miller would say that was a bad shot. He didn't do this. There was a little bit of that there, but to really help people play better golf. My radio show's been on for 3 decades because I think people want to play better. In the end, they want to play better. We're going to keep this podcast about people playing better and learning about the swing and hearing about Tiger's putting drills and, what to work on in your takeaway. And all of those things I think are critical. I'd love to see way more of that on network coverage, talking to pros about what they're working on and why they're making the change and many other things like that. But I think if we could connect with the viewers somehow in that way, it'd be much more intriguing for golfers who do. All viewers are playing golf. So that's very different. Not all viewers are playing hockey. Not all viewers are playing baseball, but all viewers are playing golf. And I think if we connect and help them play better, it makes it more intriguing.
I think I absolutely agree with that. And I also think I wish they talked a little bit more about why we should care about certain courses and give us context to what the players are trying to do, period.
Depth.
Right? It's really easy And it's starting to happen a little more. They're talking about shaping the ball a little bit, but it's really easy to watch somebody hit it in the fairway. It's a different thing to understand why maybe that was a good or bad shot. They never talk about this side of the fairway is the better side than that side of the fairway
Well,
because of the
some
angle
do,
into
but
the
I'm
pin.
saying more of that. Like it's like a color analyst in hockey.
Yeah, and that's
I
why
want to know what part of the stick you hit it on to put a certain spin on it, or to, I want to know. I want some meat on the bone.
Yeah.
I want to understand more.
So that's why apparently it's becoming a Brad Faxon love, and this is why I like what Brad Faxon has become, because Brad Faxon is doing that on Fox, right? So I think Davis Love, if he does something like that, I think Davis Love's a great idea. I'm a little confused as to why he's the pick a little bit, because he seems such a demure.
Well, we'll find
level
out.
guy,
Yeah, you don't know him.
but we don't know what he's going to be.
That's a problem. We don't know Davis Love after 25 years of him being on TV.
But I would have argued, yeah, well, fair enough.
Right?
Yeah, fair enough. I would have I didn't know what I was going to think of Brad Faxon, though, and I think he may be my favorite color commentator. So I'm waiting to be pleasantly surprised. What I hope happens, and I've heard people say that a lot of the golf announcers, the problem is they're trying to do an imitation of what a golf announcer should be. I hope Davis Love does something on his own. I think that's why, for example, Chambly and Nobilo are so successful, and Dave are so successful.
Duval.
Right? Yeah, I know. I wasn't forgetting
Okay.
Dave Duval's name. I'm just saying the three of them. I think the reason they're so successful is because they're their own people on there, and they have opinions, and they have different stances, and they talk.
But they're also, it's a free-form format. It's conversation, much like this one.
Yes.
All right. That's going to do it for today.
Yes, it's a lot.
Yeah, that's going to do it for today. We got a lot of topics covered. My only hope is that we're watching the Masters, and Tiger's leading, and Davis Love is very intriguing to listen to
And Rory's
in
catching
April. And Rory's right there,
Yeah.
and Spieth is back.
That'd be good.
And maybe DJ's playing really well. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait for the Masters.
Yeah, you know what? I'm looking forward to a good 2020. I think this year was a great year.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you learned something today. You can find Jake at Jake Haime PGA on Twitter. You can find me at Kevin Haime. Of course, this is our 16th podcast, so you can listen to some past podcasts and see what you think of us. And we'll talk to you again next time. There's going to be lots more to talk about, I'm sure.